one another. I know why people harm one another. And I know how to heal those things, having seen the solutions and identified them firsthand through lived experience. And you know what happens? We reduce theft and losses and damages through recklessness, medical costs, insurance premiums come down, business performance rates rise, small business thrives, defaults and churn rates drop, big business collections on inventory invoicing improves, big business performance improves, risk across economies drops, interest rate drops, demand for employment goes up, demand for housing purchasing by owners goes up, property prices appreciate, and the top end of town, who owned everything to start with, stands to gain the most. And the more aligned they are when we start this process, the better off they end up when we finish it all. And let's help some Aboriginals for once. Let's do it properly. Let's eliminate the shame that most of them walk around with, because it's truly a blight on the whole of Australian nation. And until we heal this blight, Australia cannot be whole. Australia cannot stand up and be a leader in the world while ever we're blighted. Oh, I love starving the room of oxygen. It puts me to sleep. It's probably it winds me down. Producing this video was actually a perfect test of it. I've got the air back, got my Aboriginal things, just had a nap. Tomorrow, going to be making the first outreach to Toowoomba Art Gallery, seeking to develop 5 Warrigal House galleries around Toowoomba, one in Wanganui. Most people would collapse if the tax office said that they're not running a business and aren't eligible for any of their entities to register for Australian business numbers or taxation or GST refunds. The tax office doesn't know what to do with us because we don't fit their systems. Our systems are too far ahead legislatively, but they don't want to give us lots of large refunds, apparently. So anyway, most people would collapse, right? Neo Roosevelt doesn't collapse. Can your octopus regrow tentacles? Neo Roosevelt Group octopus can. Our mascot, Admiral Octopus David Prime, can actually sprout new tentacles. We're just sprouting tentacles in Wanganui, New Zealand, our sister city, and we'll sprout them soon in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in the Caymans, in Lucerne, and in Chicago. Maybe in Westchester too. And in Leeds, in the UK. These are all our chosen cities from around the world, carefully selected. And I'm a builder. Blue Mason Commonwealth Lodge 324. This is my police hat, identical to police, but built myself. Actually, it's Admiral Octopus David Prime's police hat. Here's his army hat. He's also got, and his head is the exact same size as mine. Pretty big head. Oh. But he's not big-headed. He's just misunderstood and capable. There's a nice hat for him to put on. And here's Riverina. Actually got 2 Riverina hats, Riverina and Riverina stock feeds. They are a target for Community Respect Foundation to raise capital from its founding patron sponsors. Our Admiral only has 120 baseball caps, and he can only wear them cycling once per hour. So he cycles hats at 30 seconds per hat, whereas he can change skin colour and texture in 1.5 seconds, and his tentacles have nearly unlimited reach, and he can morph into just about any shape, and he can outpace and outperform any prey to catch them when he needs to prey. But he doesn't prey upon things generally, he just needs to eat occasionally. That's his criminal networks dominating hats. Believe it or not, the dark side of the economies seem to love the Admiral and his crazy knowledge of darknets and bitcoins and cryptos and so on. They're even wary of him though, so you can imagine what the big end of town is like. That's my police-themed belt. This is when the whole dark end of Toowoomba became concerned that I was actually a police officer after Project Big Smoke was announced. And I posted a funny post on LinkedIn. It got a lot of impressions about how it was just easier to tell them that I was, and rather than deal with all the constant speculation. And then I kept telling them that they were under arrest for failure to supply or to undersupply or for low quality supply of stuff just as a joke, or selling low quality supplies or selling fake supplies. Now, I've made an error. J. Lou, after I got out of the hospital of Brisbane, a Chinese capital provider into Queensland, was a recommended connection on LinkedIn, and I sent him this, telling him that an advanced copy of it would be going to Invest HK within the next 45 days for government grants and support allocations. Now, I've given him enough technology clues for him to be able to reverse engineer for the CCP the veil zero-proof architecture system, replacing the need for identity credential supplies to global banking, insurance, and if he figures it out, he'll figure out possibly G-O-O-V, Governance Oracle of Verification, a model that takes that further and develops also the verifier platform and the user wallet app that holds the verification credentials keys. So that becomes, which will become, amongst other things, your global nation border token for passing border control. Max Jackson Grass, the LLMs failed to calculate properly and model and project the possibilities and the implications thereof of what I'm capable of orchestrating and assembling in musical terms, because I believe music is the language that speaks above all languages. I'm orchestrating the world's most complicated ever beautiful symphony. I've already composed it, and if you could just hear the sweet, sweet, soothing sounds that it begins with, the motivating, driving melodies that build it, and the wonderful crescendo when it is all realized, then you could hear what it is that God has gifted me the ability to create. Father Michael, my spiritual father, suggests that what I might have been gifted is divine inspiration. So NRG Music on YouTube, Neo Roosevelt Group. With our sounds we express ourselves, who we are, what we believe, who our character, my nature. We spell out what we hold dear and what we care about. By simply listening to our sounds, you can get to know us very well. So if you truly hear us, you will come to understand. Just have a listen. Listen to the last track, number 33. To know who triple DMC, and what that engine of a machine is capable of and where he's going. Because of being too fat and too medicated and unfit, I'm going to get my fitness back to what it was before I was unfairly put in the mental ward for 20 months. But I was, 42? I could run 2 kilometers without gaining more than 20 heartbeats per minute increase, and my resting rate was below 60, and I was fit as a fiddle, and I used to live on $40 a week. And I had a fully furnished 2-bedroom townhouse with full smart home and USB-C deployments and full streaming. When I built my home in inner city Brisbane when I was 23, I had full streaming capabilities, 1,000 movies, 5,000 TV episodes, about a year's worth of audio, a library of self-educational audio books, and porn galore on every TV in the house, which was in every room, except for the kitchen, which I didn't have to think about a TV kitchen back then because I never cooked. And I used to live on $2,000 a week. But those were my younger days when I used to spend $5,000 a quarter on a wardrobe and these sort of things, going to David Jones and so on. I've since learned how to live the hard way. I spent 15 weeks on the street in the Gold Coast with no Centrelink, no nothing, no money, no friends, eating lizards and crabs and camping out at an Orang boat park. I know how to do it tough, and I don't whinge and I don't complain. I went to court in a pair of socks to defend my name, and a suit and a pair of pants and a shirt that St. Vincent's had to give me for $0. And I only just got there because I got charged with offences with the police. Raided my office at the Gold Coast 3 times, only once with a search warrant, and they unfairly kicked me out and booted me. This is after Westpac deplatformed me for suspected anti-money laundering because we were sending exchange dollars to BTC-E, an anonymously owned crypto exchange run by Alexander, who I appealed to and got an account with. We were the only company in Australia to have a direct connection to that exchange, which was liquidating Eastern European bitcoins at below global rates, and we were selling them into the Australian domestic market on a 1-hour delivery protocol with cash over the bank deposits. So I was depositing $50,000 a day or more into cash into Westpac, because I had to pick up the cash from all the different branches of the different banks to speed up the cycle by a day. And Westpac, all they saw was this cash coming in every day, and there was a rumor at the same time about uh, Russian criminal money being laundered from the Gold Coast to Eastern Europe, and I got connected with all of that. And because of Hayley Riley, my exotic dancer, Gundawindi born star of Toy Box, fiance, I got started Toy Box for 6 years, fiance, a beautiful hyperpolymath with mental health problems and a criminal network like you wouldn't believe. I got associated with that criminal network, and then I got associated with Chemical King at the Gold Coast, a chemical supply company who's heavily monitored for supplying bikie clubs, and they were all just incredibly interested in us. And they found us fascinating and generous and hospitable and wise and caring. Like, I met the founder of the Rebels Gold Coast chapter, and on his first night, I asked him why he was he exiled from the bikie club. What did it feel like to be exiled from the bikie club for being a druggo and influencing the young ones the wrong way? And he told me about how Raptors had bankrupted his construction business by defaulting on their contracts, and that led him down the path of drugs, and to get over it. And I asked him for 2 bicycle tires for my salvaged Mongoose mountain bike that I took out of the dumpster at Chevron Renaissance, and whose tires I collapsed the first time I rode it, whose wheels I collapsed doing a spectacular stairway jump on my way back from collecting the Morning Post, which I did every morning from the Express Post. I worked for 18 months straight at 2 hours. This is back when I took drugs. I worked 18 hours to 21 hours, 21 hours to 45 hours straight. Hang on. I worked for up to 2 weeks straight between sleeps, and 21 to 45 hours is what I work now. But I used to go 2 weeks straight with no sleep. I was the first person seen by Australia Post every morning, collecting parcels from the darknet, not for distribution, just for personal use. I always kept everything below the 2 gram threshold that's considered a more criminal offence. But anyway,
huge thank you to a few people that donated and another $1,000 donation.
Now back to Robert. So Robert's idea of fixing the community was via his experience most recently was to take over the problematic problem of the meth heads, which is that they're all running around stealing from one another, cutting down gear, producing sad outcomes. 2 out of 3 buys for small buyers who decide to go large, inconsistency of supply, constant disappointment, robberies, etc. He standardised product quality, lowered prices, affordability, provided funding and crisis support to people whose cars had broke down, whose laundry sinks were blocked, whose plumbing needed attending, who was stranded in Brisbane after supposed to be moving home or whatever, and he was, and then going around and doing free food nights, distributing food to homeless people who couldn't get to basement services or Tony's kitchen with his spare money. The only thing that he did of a splurgious nature was that he bought a jet ski for $5,000, and this is because it was worth like $13,000 or whatever. And he upgraded his like 15-year-old $3,000 four-wheel drive to a more modern $11,000 four-wheel drive that was worth $15,000. Like, it didn't even have a reversing camera, right? Like, and the bloke was distributing like only as much as, say, a £1/4 a week. And this is when you can have heavy users going through half a gram a day, right? So it doesn't take all that many blokes and females to be on the stuff to get through a £1/4 weekly. And Robert's now vilified in the newspaper, the Reverend is, for what was essentially his best attempt at a non-judgmental program of community stabilisation through caring supply and problem management. A one-man attempt at it. And this is while he was building R&D ventures with Neo Roosevelt Group. Well, at some point, I'd avoided getting my monthly depot by telling them that I found $3,000 worth of charges on my credit card while I was in the hospital, which was done by Kate Louise Simpson when I ditched her as an Aboriginal business partner because she was too problematic and demanding and in love with me. And she went to Inglewood and charged all these charges to my credit card while I was in the hospital. And so when I got the refund of these, I told the hospital that I was taking myself to the Gold Coast for a holiday, and based on my ability to budget, I could probably stay there for a week or two at least. And they told the police that I missed an appointment, even though there was no appointment. There was just a regular expectation that they could turn up at my house and jab me whenever they wanted. And so that gave the police the right to then issue a warrant to arrest me. And there was a 3-week manhunt for me around town, which I easily evaded until the police told me that they'd given up the search and that there was no demand at the hospital for me, at which point I posted a YouTube video unveiling my secret hideout. And then the following Monday, I was there was a knock on the door, and there was 6 police officers and the hospital case manager, and they put me in the mental ward for 3 months on account of I had nowhere to live, and they would only eject me from the mental ward into stable accommodations, even though I had enough money to stay in a motel easily for 18 months. And I had to go into the care of a nefarious NDIS provider who wanted to furnish me with 10 hours per day of support worker activity. It felt like being monitored and so on. And he said, I know you're a businessman. This is Bermuda voted Kervick of Inspired Living QLD Proprietary Limited. He told me he owned the business when he, in fact, I told him, if you lie to me, it's going to cost you 100 or 1,000 times what it cost me to find out everything I need to know about you. I was basically saying, if I have to spend the $10 or $20 to do searches on you, I will expand and expand and expand, and I will not know where to stop the takedown. I'm just like that. So Babir told me he was Dutch. He's actually Bosnian. My Croatian friends wouldn't like that very much. I don't know much about Bosnians. He told me he lived in the gutter in the Netherlands, and that he wanted to help people. And he kept telling me that my life was better than living in the gutter. And I told him, you indignifying, disrespectful fucker, Bosnian, do not tell me that I should be happy because I'm not living in the gutter, when I deserve dignity and I deserve autonomy and I deserve privacy. And he told me that he would put a television in my bedroom so that I could sit in my bedroom when support workers were in my house, mopping my floor incessantly twice a day. 2 support workers, 2 5-hour shifts per day with a 3-hour break, 7 days per week, agents of my landlord, and telling me that I have to share the flat with another disabled person and pay $350 per week for the privilege, and in a house that they owned, they'd be developers of a property portfolio, and they're telling me that they truly care about disabled people when they're just exploiting the already bloated NDIS system, which is consuming Australia's budget out of control. NDIS costs Australia more than defence plus aged care combined, plus education combined, just looking after disabled people. And it doesn't address the fundamental structural problem with Australian capital, which is that it's all deployed in primarily the residential real estate sector. And I get this, only Australia's level of happiness is lower now than it was during COVID. Australian property investors, only 1% of them enjoy a cash flow positive investment. The Toowoomba Hybrid Exchange, THEX, or the X.global, is going to make capital all of the farmland, all of the small business equity capital, all of the farm production assets, and it's going to provide to Australians a better investment thesis than lazy capital deployment in listed equity funds, government bonds, and residential real estate property. That means we'll stop denying the up-and-coming generations the privilege of home ownership, because everyone will be deploying their financial assets in more rewarding purposes, being innovation creation, empowering this whole beautiful nation. That's my thesis, Marc. This is my best attempt to present it, and I haven't scripted any of this. If you'd like to participate, I'd love a quasi-wealthy uncle, one who doesn't necessarily care for me all that much, but who is willing to dish out some useful wisdom, some advice, provide some guardrails, and connect me with a few friends of similar capacity and capability here and there where you feel comfortable across your network. I'd like to be introduced or toured around or suggested to visit some of the world's nicer places, such as Lucerne, where I only just found out about because they're monitoring those interests on my LinkedIn profile. And I'd like to inform you of a few wisdoms and insights, if you don't mind a younger man's thesis and analyses. With respect, with conviction, with morality, with motivation, and with God's blessings, may us both make the right decisions that we need to for the future of humanity. Thank you for listening. Good night and goodbye, and farewell for now. I trust and hope you will at least call for a more exploratory discussion on fund structuring possibilities and funding requirements for an initial flywheel development funding round and a more aggressive approach options. I haven't priced everything, but I can model it fairly quickly, especially with agentic power, which I have ability to deploy with just a little bit of resources, maybe a couple $1,000 here or there, to buy a bit of actual on-site equipment and infrastructure. All right, mate. Matey, as they call it in Australia, and sir, as you would be called if you're British, I'm sure, and my good gentleman, who I look forward to shaking hands with when you jump off your Learjet to the Toowoomba Well Camp, so I can show you around this beautiful city, just as then I hope you'll show me around Westchester in reciprocity. I can only speak zero point 0.7 languages. I'm still gaining a grasp of the English language. Reciprocity around Westchester, and maybe it can give me a different angle on New York. I didn't like it all that much staying at the W, where they said everything is possible, or all you have to do is ask, or whatever. The room was too small, and the staff weren't responsive enough, and they kept playing repeats on the tennis. But we wanted to see the new match in the 2010 Internationals, which I enjoyed partying in the city of New York with my good friends, the Walker family of Collection House. Oh, one final note. The only reason my current or historic capital and connections network won't deal with me is because they don't understand what I've become and how I have changed and adapted my brain and capability stack after 36 months of 16 hours per day, multi-agent LLM, constant prompting, skim reading, absorbing outputs, onboarding, processing the second and third order effects of the second and third order effects that I get the prompt to analyze, cross-domain synthesizing implications of that, and then reprompting again and again and again and again in a massive brain development rewiring looping cycle that's still ongoing. With the help of NAD plus and supplements, I'm rewiring out of control. I don't think anyone else has done anything like this historically. So the possibilities that have been developed in my head could be unprecedented. I'm not saying I'm special, I'm just something new that hasn't been done before. And I seek to create new things that haven't been done before. It's not a surprise, it's a necessary consequence if you think about it. And I'm sure you're a thinker, and I'll appreciate your thoughts. This is David Matthew Collison once again signing out with great respect, admiration, and possibly love someday. Alright, goodbye.